A reading from the prophet Micah. Woe to those who plot evil, who lie in bed planning mischief. No sooner is it dawn than they do it. Their hands have the strength for it. Seizing the fields they covet, they take over houses as well. Owner and house they confiscate together, taking both man and inheritance. So the Lord says this: Now it is I who plot such mischief against his breed, as your necks will not escape, nor will you be able to walk proudly, so evil will the time be. On that day they will make a satire on you, sing a dirge and say, we are stripped of everything. My people's portion is measured out and shared. No one will give it back to them. Our fields are awarded to our despoiler. Therefore, you will have no one to measure out a share in the community of the Lord. The word of the Lord. Lord, do not forget the poor. Lord, why do you stand far off and hide yourself in times of distress? The poor man is devoured by the pride of the wicked. He is caught in the schemes that others have made. Lord, do not forget the poor. For the wicked man boasts of his heart's desires. The covetous blasphemes and spurns the Lord. In his pride, the wicked says, he will not punish. There is no God. Such are his thoughts. Lord, do not forget the poor. His mouth is full of cursing, guile, oppression, mischief and deceit under his tongue. He lies in wait among the reeds. The innocent he murders in secret. Lord, do not forget the poor. But you have seen the trouble and sorrow. You note it, you take it in hand. The helpless trusts himself to you, for you are the helper of the orphan. Lord, do not forget the poor. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. Make me grasp the way of your precepts, and I will muse on your wonders. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. The Pharisees went out and began to plot against Jesus, discussing how to destroy him. Jesus knew this and withdrew from the district. Many followed him and he cured them all, but he warned them not to make him known. This was to fulfill the prophecy of Isaiah. Here is my servant whom I have chosen, my beloved, the favorite of my soul. I will endow him with my spirit, and he will proclaim the true faith to the nations. He will not brawl or shout, nor will anyone hear his voice in the streets. He will not break the crushed reed, nor put out the smouldering wick, till he has led the truth to victory. In his name, the nations will put their hope. The Gospel of the Lord. One of the blessings to which we're very grateful to the IT team is the way in which the psalm response and others can be there across the bottom of the screen. Incredibly helpful aid memoir. It's very easy, of course, when we're celebrating Mass, when we're all here together, that the reader says the response to the psalm is, and we try desperately to remember, Lord, do not forget the poor, Lord, do not forget the poor, and don't really listen, perhaps, to what the reader is then saying in the various verses that follow. We're so focused on making sure we get the words right. And someone next to us says something slightly different, and then we start to wonder, and the whole sense and the meaning can get lost in that sort of exercise of memory. It's worth perhaps pausing occasionally and just reflecting. Reflecting this morning, Lord, do not forget the poor. When you pause to reflect on it, it seems to me that that's actually quite a strange sentence. If there is anyone who will remember the poor, then surely it is the Lord. Who are we to offer him that advice or encouragement? But the sense of that response changes as we put it into the various contexts of the world in which we live. Raises the question, who are those who need the Lord? Who are the poor? As we heard in the Gospel, the Lord was forced for a while from the public arena, but he continued his ministry to the sick and to those in need, those who had that poverty of health, those who had that poverty of life. He was aware that he risks being discovered. He urges them to keep silent, but he cannot help himself. It is so key to who he is and his ministry that he continues to serve those who need him. It's easy to simply focus on those without money or resources, and indeed they too need the Lord. They need us to act in his name. But Mother Teresa famously said on a number of occasions about the variety of poverty that there is in the world. She reflected on it when she came to this country, reflecting on the particular poverty that we have. She said, there are two kinds of poverty. We have the poverty of material. For example, in some places like India, Ethiopia, and other places where the people are hungry for a loaf of bread, real hunger. But there is a much deeper, much greater hunger, and that is the hunger for love and that terrible loneliness and being unwanted, unloved, being abandoned by everybody. There's been much talk about the poverty that will follow in the wake of this pandemic. I cannot help thinking, though, that with required isolation, etc., the way in which we're required to avoid each other, the risk of that second kind of poverty, of isolation and of loneliness, is very real. And the call to support each other in prayer, this day to make a telephone call to someone, to send a message, to do something that we can with safe distancing, to make sure that no one feels isolated. Again, we come back to gratitude for the IT team who are making it possible for us to all be here in prayer. It's easy to leave it to the Lord, to ask him not to forget the poor. But that psalm response changes in that context from advice to the Lord to a prayer that we might follow the example of the Lord in this gospel as Mother Teresa did in her generation, and never forget the poor. And as we reflect on our response, as we reflect on our lives, as we reflect on our own spiritual poverty and struggles, the response changes again and becomes a plea to God on our own behalf. Lord, never forget the poor.